Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a JRPG, and it's a damn good one at that. Now, I don't actually feel that strongly about whether or not you want to classify it as a JRPG. Doesn't really matter that much to me because it feels like a JRPG and it has the spirit of a JRPG. It holds on to some of the tropes in its story writing as a JRPG, but it also switches it up just enough to really make it stand out. If you want to call it evolution or modernization, I don't really care. Expedition 33 looks and plays like a classic RPG. It brings fresh things to the formula, and while I don't necessarily think it reaches all-time great status, I do think it's a damn good one, and it's totally worthy of a Game of the Year nomination. This is a review of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Hey, Danny with the DMGT here, your new favorite place for all things music, gaming, and tech. So Expedition 33 is another game in the turn-based umbrella that is recently finding a lot of popularity, a lot of cult following. And it makes sense. Instead of the classic just click through a bunch of menus, the combat is much more engaging, incorporating the real-time elements with the turn-based that we've seen before. This specific version of real-time mechanics with the turn-based formula feels more reminiscent of Sea of Stars in 2023, but it builds on that concept with greater variety of mechanics. Each character has their own unique abilities, timing windows, and rhythm, so even though you're taking turns, it still feels engaging. You never really check out. Now, this stuff traces all the way back to like Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy IV's ATB system. JRPGs for a long time have tried to make combat feel more active, and while Expedition 33 doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel, it does add some flash that makes it a little bit more engaging. Where things start getting a little bit dicey for me, at least in this game, is the parry and dodge system. It's a little bit frustrating on higher difficulties, not because you can't get the timing right, but because they effectively become required mechanics in the higher difficulties. But when the attack patterns are so full of fake outs, and the way to win is really just learning when those fake outs happen by retrying a boss 2 to 3 times, that formula gets a little repetitive very quickly. And because of that, to me at least, it feels like you're learning attack patterns than actually mastering the combat itself. But if someone wants to argue that learning the attack patterns is learning the combat, that's fine. I'm not really going to argue with you there, but I did find that to get a little repetitive rather than really leaning in to the elemental affinities and weaknesses. Ironically though, the end of this game really fixes that. The late game bosses, the final bosses, which I won't get into spoilers yet, instead of overly relying on the fake outs, the audio cues are much more fine-tuned, so the combat feels a little bit more exciting and fair. It's just a shame that the game waits until the end to show its best foot forward. That feels a little nitpicky, but overall I did enjoy the combat. I think it keeps you fresh and engaged, and while overall I would have enjoyed a little bit more balancing, I did have a fun time playing this. When it comes to the world and characters where JRPGs typically really start finding their footing, Expedition 33 crushes it, at least on the character side. The voice acting is consistently excellent, and even though the dialogue variety is pretty limited outside of major story scenes, each character still feels distinct and full of personality. And this is reflected mechanically in the combat, where party roles are well balanced. There's no strict pigeonholing, like this character is doing heals, this character is only doing magic attacks, this person's only doing physical attacks. They all have unique functions, but can still flex into different roles depending on how you build them. On the combat side, I will say some characters are a little bit more fleshed out than others. I think CL's combat system, for example, is really cool, but when you can have Verso or Mael stack certain abilities and really cheese your way through the game, that's where the balancing really comes into play. As far as the exploration and the world design, I have mixed feelings about this, because the world design I think is unique. It's vibrant, it has a lot of personality in its distinct areas, but the actual exploration part of it I did find to get a little tedious, a little repetitive. The side content primarily rewards you with cosmetics, and while there are some fun puzzles and optional boss fights, I wouldn't exactly call the density memorable. The platforming sections in particular I think are pretty janky, and while they're entirely optional and I didn't hate them, it just felt like a way to pad some content in the open world. The game's biggest sin in this area is really in its level design, not so much its world design, because it all feels unique, but when pathing isn't exactly clear to the player, it's easy to get lost and retread your steps. And while I understand lore-wise that kind of makes sense because you're an expedition trying to make it further than anyone else has made it, it just doesn't make for a great gameplay experience when you're retreading your steps after a particularly long battle or a side path takes you to some more cosmetics. That said, all of it feels cohesive. It's all parts of this overarching painting of the world, which I think fits the story really well. The music, however, my god, the soundtrack here is incredible. The main theme has been haunting. It's stuck in my head. I have not stopped humming that ever since I've been playing the game. It's doubly insane when you find out that this is this composer's first time creating a video game soundtrack. The music switching between orchestral, ambient, high energy, there's guitars and drums in this, blending in from your exploration seamlessly into your combat, out into story beats. It's really well done. It just feels cohesive and things just flow from story to visual art style to music so well. Expedition 33 nails this part of it. And speaking of the story, here's where we're getting into spoilers, so you've been warned. On the surface, Expedition 33's plot is a very typical RPG fanfare. You start with a clear goal. There's a big baddie you have to beat. You do it. Oh wait, there's actually someone else in control. That's the real big bad, the real final boss. Turns out the primary villain is God. You know, the classic defeat God JRPG stuff. To be fair, I'm being a little facetious, but what makes it work is the execution. You get to the end of Act 2 and you basically find out that all the people that you've been traveling with and trying to save are paintings, they're projection. It's effectively a simulation, but the why for this is where things get really interesting. This canvas, this world was created from grief. You learn that Maëlle is actually this painted version of Alicia, the daughter of Renoir and the paintress who experienced this tragedy in the outside world, outside the canvas. Their house burned down. Maëlle was badly injured and she was saved by her brother Verso, who ended up dying in that fire. This canvas being the last remnants of Verso, because this is the canvas that he created, the world that he created. It's why you have the paintress and Renoir here, the paintress trying to hold on to that last bit of Verso's soul, and Renoir, the father, effectively saying, you can't live like this, it's going to kill you, you need to move on, you need to process this grief. And instead of going really existential, it recontextualizes everything that you've been through, because all of this is sort of a result of grief and different people processing that grief differently. That adds an emotional reality that keeps the story grounded and it feels so fresh with that JRPG formula that makes the ending really compelling. Renoir is basically telling everyone, hey, we need to learn how to move on. We have to get rid of this canvas because our son is dead and we need to be able to process that instead of living in the fake reality, basically. And that culminating with siding with Maëlle / Alicia, or the remnants of Verso's soul being like, hey, I'm ready to move on. I've lived this life for X amount of years. I'm done. I'm tired. Whereas Maëlle is like, no, I need to keep you around. I'm trying to hold on to that last bit of you, is brutal. It's a beautiful metaphor for how we process grief. When do we let go? When do we hold on? Do those decisions hurt others around us or even ourselves? It's such a cool choice at the end that really elevates the narrative, I think, and it takes it beyond a good ending versus a bad ending. It's just different endings depending on how someone processes grief. So while Expedition 33 isn't perfect, a lot of familiar JRPG beats, the side content got a little repetitive for me and the balancing is a little off. As a whole, this game is fresh, and it's not just because it's a different game, but because it takes a lot of old parts and assembles them in a way that feels meaningful, grounded in emotional reality that resonates with basically anyone that's experienced grief. It's just a really heartfelt game, and that counts for a lot, so Expedition 33 gets 4 out of 5. Those are my thoughts. If you've played Expedition 33, I want to hear your thoughts. I know a lot of people have this as their front runner for Game of the Year, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree. If you enjoyed the video, give a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you want. If you didn't, that's okay too. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.